Hello, everyone. I'm Amber Phillips, and I want to welcome you to our virtual public involvement training. We'll have Ryan Perry here. He's monitoring the chat box. If you have any questions during the presentation, please write them in the box. Ryan will answer some of them throughout the training, and others I will answer at the end of the training. So with that, I will get started. So with public involvement, we have actually been working on making changes to our criteria for public involvement over the last year. So we're trying to tell the entire story, make sure that outreach is continuous and ongoing, that we're paying attention to the brand, which is how we interact with the public, not just our logo or our symbol. We want to simplify the message and make sure that our meeting spaces, whether that's a virtual meeting space or when we can go back into in-person meetings, that we're paying attention to that meeting space. So I do want to thank everyone for bearing with us, especially over these last few months. We had, of course, planned on rolling some of these things out as we were going, and we did have to quickly finalize them and adapt, of course, to going virtual with all level of projects. So I want to thank everyone for that. So we do have a new process, and it's a step-by-step process for public involvement. And so the very first step that we're asking people to kind of take is we're asking everyone to get together. And when I say a meeting, what I usually mean is either you're having some sort of conversation, it's just at a regular scheduled team meeting, that you know who is working on what and when it needs to be complete. And so for the very first step, when the project comes out of program delivery, you need to get concurrence from Albert Shelby to advance to a public meeting. And so for that concurrence, what you need to provide at a minimum is the environmental handout, the fact sheet, and the project layouts. So that step still remains the same, but just make sure that the team knows who is actually providing those materials and that they're following the required QA/QC process prior to submitting them for concurrence. And after they are submitted to Kim and she writes the letter from Albert to say we can advance, then you want to make sure that your team for sure has reviewed all the materials and that they are meeting their requirements. So the district, make sure the district's had a chance to look at the layouts and the fact sheet and at least the environmental analyst before it's submitted to myself for concurrence to advance. In the past, Eric Duff provided that concurrence after program delivery concurred to advance, and now I'm providing that concurrence. So I will look for the package with the letter of concurrence from program delivery before I provide concurrence to the PM, NEPA planner, and the environmental program manager to advance. And step one, and we'll go over the worksheet for step one in a minute, it's really a continuous process. It just happens to be named step one because you start the process, but it actually moves forward with you as you advance and as you're completing materials for public involvement. So just keep that in mind, that step one is not a completion step at step one. So what step one is doing, how I mentioned, we're trying to look at completing who's completing the welcome letter, the fact sheet, and the layouts, and then everything else where it says needed in this column, there's a choose an item. You can select not applicable if it's not applicable to your project. If you're doing something like introductory boards, you can add items there to say exactly what those boards are. And some of them could be standardized boards that already exist that you're just putting with your project, and maybe someone doesn't actually have to create it. So you can modify this table one to be as inclusive of tracking as you want it to be. And when things are submitted to the team for review, the team should make sure that they're reviewing things in approximately 10 days. When something's submitted to me, I will also try to review it in 10 days. So if you need me to review it quicker to advance to a meeting, just make sure you let me know. And I'll go over all of these materials here in a minute and what they all mean. But just know, again, when you're getting concurrence to advance, I'm not looking at the postcard or any videos or anything like that. It's really at the minimum the same things that program delivery is looking at: the layout, the fact sheet, and the welcome letter. But I would like to also see any introductory boards, at least the start of those boards, if they're ready at that point in time, to come to me as well. So what we're looking for in the welcome letter, again, we want to make sure that we're providing clear communication to the public, simple language as possible, what issue we're trying to seek, the current conditions along the corridor. And you can see this is all bullet pointed out so that it's really quick and the public can see it at a glance. And we also want to let them know what would happen if we don't build the project. So if the no build is selected, what our proposed solution is, the benefits of the project, and of course how they can assist, where we are in the process, and our next steps. So that's kind of general information. So now I'll kind of show you what that looks like visually. And visually is really important. It was always important, but it's almost even more important now that we're going to all virtual right now. But we also want to make sure that even when we go back to the public, that we're showing them images that are clear and concise. So again, what are the existing conditions on the corridor? And we have these little infographics here where you can see the different lane configurations and the pedestrian symbol. Those infographics, we're going to have an infograph library and a PowerPoint, and they will probably for now be placed on SharePoint in the environmental folder. And in the future, we'll probably link those up to multiple places so that people can find them. And as we get more of these infographics, as more projects come, that library will expand. So just know that we have some created, that not all of them need to be created from scratch for your guys' projects. So as you can see, we have one for roundabouts, different turn lanes, and we want to make sure that people know what our proposed improvements are. So you can see on this project, in this example, we actually had 4 different typical sections throughout the project, and we could easily show the public what those typical sections were at a glance and from what location to what location. And of course, this one had sidewalks, turn lanes, and some roundabouts. So these are just different examples. And again, like I said, we want to make sure we tell the public what's going to happen without the project. If your project is for improving travel time, you would want to make that clear. How much time are they saving? What would happen if we don't build the project? So just provide whatever data your project has available as long as it's accurate. And again, here's just a common infographic that we're using. So if you define any engineering terms within your project description, we want to stay away from that as much as possible. But if it's more difficult to stay away from, such as a lot of times we refer to level of service, make sure you put this graphic on the website as well to go along with that, so that when the public reads that the project is going to improve level of service, they know exactly what you're talking about. And I think another thing that comes to mind that we do that too is sometimes we talk about the load weighting of a bridge. So if we have any graphics that better explain that, make sure that we include them. And again, once you're ready to move to step 2, make sure that you have to have your concurrences before you move forward. We're not going to start putting things on the website. And again, I'm not going to approve to advance to step 2 if it's a project that comes from program delivery without that letter that program delivery has concurred to advance the project. And I'm not also, the only reason why I would not approve us to move forward after that is if the materials are not in good shape, especially going to this new where we're moving straight to virtual. Things are moving very quickly after I provide concurrence. People are almost ready to put everything on the website because we're not having an actual in-person meeting. So all that time to find a meeting location and space all gets condensed. So it's really important that high quality materials are provided to myself for moving forward. So what exactly is the new process? So I just went through all of the step 1, kind of determining what you need to start creating, kind of getting some ideas of some date ranges. You can always change those date ranges if something happens, just because you enter in that we're getting materials at one time. If the project stalls, you can change that date in the table. So once I give concurrence to move forward, then you'll want to start with getting your envelope for your mailing and advertising, making sure that the ad is created, you're working with the districts, making sure that they know when to invite elected officials to view the web information. And of course, we want to create the web page, and we want to mail out the postcards and run the ad, but we don't want to do that until the website actually exists, because people will get that postcard and they'll expect that they can go straight to the website and look at the information. And so with that, what we're saying is that we have a 24-day approximate comment period from the first ad that is placed. And the first ad can be whichever advertisement happens to go out first. So if it's the newspaper ad or if it's a postcard, just approximately 24 days. And that allows for any days if printing is delayed and it goes out and someone gets it, mailing delays, that they still have enough time to get on the web and view information. So if it's accidentally 20 days by the time everything gets out, that is okay. The 24 is just a range and an idea. And probably the best way to pick that is right when you're getting ready to give the materials to your environmental analyst who will actually pass them on. We have a PI person in our office who is working on these web pages. So they'll pass them on. His name is Ed Cadell, and they'll pass them to Ed to actually start the web page. So when you're doing that, you just need to know when the district ad is going to run and approximately when the postcards will be printed, and then you can just finalize and plug in those end dates for your comment period close. And when you're doing the on-site meetings, then of course on this worksheet, you're really advancing to step 10 after these are posted. But I'm going to go through all the steps of the worksheet because at some point in time, we will be back to business as usual with in-person meetings. And so I'll go through the whole steps and I'll still outline other things that are needed. So since I was just talking about advertising, you've probably been involved with some projects recently and noticed that we have stopped putting in those roadway signs. Part of that was we were in the process of looking at new ways to do this before COVID started and new ways to advertise. And we had actually discussed it with Federal Highway back in, I think it was January or February, and there was no actual requirement for the roadway signs. It was just how we were advertising because that's just the way we've always advertised. And so what we started to think about were different ways to advertise. How can we advertise? Well, we still use the newspaper ads. There are still people who are getting it from the ads. But our biggest thing that we started doing is sending out postcards. And there is a lot of features from the U.S. Postal Service that now allows you to actually get addresses for different postal routes. So things that we weren't able to do in the past are now possible. And of course, we're looking at things like yard signs. So they look like the political yard signs that you see out in the right of way. We can make our yard signs. We're also looking, you can do paid text messages, who can send text messages to everyone who's on the do not call list. There's possibilities of advertising on the billboards when there's free ad space, and of course our social media. Now, when we go back to in-person meetings, if we have a really large meeting and the district still feels that a roadway sign would still be a valuable way to advertise, that is still a possibility for advertising when we go to an in-person meeting. So just make sure you're coordinating with the district on the best way to advertise. For the most part, the newspaper ad and the postcard is probably going to satisfy 90% of our projects. So most of our CE minor level projects that we're trying to reach out to the public for, probably a newspaper and postcard are what we need. Maybe if we have to really reach commuter through traffic, then we might start using some of these other projects or some of these other advertising methods. Or if we have, of course, a larger scale capital improvement, controversial types of projects, we would move on and use even more advertising methods. So we have directions for how to determine where to send postcards. And so we would go to everyday direct mail. And of course, I don't expect you guys to read this slide or anything. We have these directions out there so you can just pull them when you're ready. But just something to keep in mind, if you have to mail them to more than 5,000 addresses, you'll have to do 2 every door direct mail polls. Now, also I wanted to caution you, if you have a vendor that are printing these postcards for you, it has come to my attention that some vendors will allow you to provide the every door direct mail envelope, and they will pull the addresses down and actually print the addresses on the postcard, which allows you to use a smaller postcard. However, not all printers will do that. And if you use every door direct mail without the direct addresses, then they'll bundle them. The printers will have to bundle them, and you will have to have a larger postcard size. And so with the larger size, it is a slight cost difference. Of course, it costs more to do a larger size, but some printing companies don't take the addresses for you and put them in an envelope. When GDOT does it with our printing company, they do take the addresses for us, but just know, if you're a consultant, what your printers will and won't do, so that you know what postcard size that you have to recommend. And then, of course, this is just moving on. If you are actually having a physical meeting, then of course you move on to the steps in the worksheet, just like you used to, coordinating with the district on time, location, what your room needs are. And the district will, of course, ensure that we're meeting Title VI and that meeting location is accessible. The district and the project team, of course, will still have to let us know if things should be translated or if we have any minority populations that we need to do any special advertising outreach to. So we'll still need to get that information on all projects at the beginning, probably in step 1 when we have that conversation with the district. But they'll just fill out this form when we actually go to meetings. And then, of course, just their regular general meeting information and their advertisement needs. And then our step 6 now, it just talks about making sure that we're finalizing for our advertising. And then if we have to schedule a dry run, If we're scheduling a dry run when we go back to in-person meetings, or if we're having an online live event, we do want to make sure that all the materials are submitted in the scheduling with the dry run, and all materials must have final comments on it the day of the dry run. So the dry runs are to prepare staff for actually attending the meeting. They are not to review materials. So that means all materials must be reviewed prior to that time. And again, there's just directions for how to run the meeting. Of course, when I set this up, we were in person, so I put on there, of course, the emergency exits. If we're doing an online dry run, then we can skip that one. And so at the dry run, if you remember in step 1, I talked about a name tag key. We want to make sure that we start that in step 1 and we actually have it finalized actually prior to scheduling who's going to actually attend the meeting. Because the idea is if you're attending the meeting, you should really make an effort to attend the dry run. The dry run is to prepare staff for the meeting. So what we have tried on other projects and has worked very successfully is an actual color-coded name tags. And the reason why that works very well is twofold. One, it actually allows the GDOT and consultant staff to actually not have to memorize everyone's face and position, within 10 minutes before the meeting. You could actually much more easily look at someone's color code if you're in environmental and someone starts talking to you about right away. You don't have to memorize all 5 people working right away, or even just memorizing one of them and sending all the people to the same person. Now you can just look for their pink color code name tag. And the second reason why that's very helpful is because now the public, if they're talking to someone environmental and they see you're in a green name tag with environmental on it, they actually don't expect you to be able to answer all the design related questions or all the right-of-way questions. They have a better understanding about why you're telling them you don't know that information and you're going to find someone who does. So that really makes them feel like they're understanding the process. And also at the dry run, you want to talk about the room layout. Approximately how are you going to set up the room? And you might have that done before the dry run, but if not, you should at least talk about it in general. It could change when you get there in person, but just have an idea. And your assignments, who's bringing what, who's setting things up, what time should each crew arrive, so set up crew arrival, general staff, when's the court reporter expected, general things like that you want to make sure you're talking about at the dry run. Oops, sorry. And of course, after your dry run, you're getting ready to advertise. And if you're having a meeting, you want to make sure that those postcards are out 2 weeks prior to the event. And if you look at that, that's actually where that 24 days comes from. If you're advertising something 14 days before a physical meeting and there's a 10-day comment period after the physical meeting, you get that same 24 days. So now you know where that 24 days actually makes a lot of sense. But here I'm going to take you to our actual webpage site that we have live now for the Georgia 400 project, so that you guys can see our new website. And so this is our new web page. And on this web page, as part of this, we have for these more complex projects, we actually have an actual virtual meeting room. So you can see the website can be as complex or as simple as we need it to be. Of course, we welcome people with directions. I'm just going to go ahead and play you the welcome video because it really goes through things that the website does.
Hi, I'm Natalie Dale with the Georgia Department of Transportation. In light of official directives and current public health and safety guidelines encouraging social distancing due to COVID-19, we welcome you to the virtual information meeting for the State Route 400 Express Lanes project, which is part of Georgia DOT's Major Mobility Investment Program. In early 2019, Georgia DOT conducted a series of public meetings to share initial concepts and designs for the State Route 400 Express Lanes project and collect feedback from the public. With more than 1,200 meeting attendees generating more than 500 public comments, combined with numerous meetings with local leaders, the project team took those valuable responses and further refined the concept design. Georgia DOT has placed updated project information on an online platform in compliance with social distancing guidelines to avoid large gatherings. The online platform and interactive virtual meeting room houses project information that you would find at an in-person public hearing open house. The purpose of this virtual information meeting is to share with you updates to the concept design since 2019 and proposed detours during construction, review the draft environmental assessment and the National Park Service's statement of findings, and view additional project information to better help you understand the State Route 400 Express Lanes. We welcome you to review these project materials in any of the following ways. With our online platform and interactive virtual meeting room where you can view displays, videos, and materials that would be found at a traditional Georgia DOT in-person public meeting. The virtual meeting room provides directions on how to access project materials and navigate the space. We will host a live virtual presentation on Tuesday, September 1st from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Our project team will give a virtual presentation, and afterwards, members of our project team will be available to respond to questions from attendees. Links to join the virtual presentation will be available on our website along with our Spanish and English audio-only options for those wishing to join by phone. Additionally, all updated project information shown on our online platform and recordings from our virtual event will be made available in the document library on the Major Mobility GA project website. We encourage you to submit feedback on any aspect of the project or the materials you view for the State Route 400 Express Lanes project. You can submit your feedback during our public comment period, which ends Tuesday, September 22nd. Lastly, if you're not comfortable viewing the updated project information using the online platform and would like to make a request to attend an official public hearing open house, please notify the project team by September 2nd to secure your reservation. We are tentatively hosting a public hearing open house on Tuesday, September 8th at Georgia DOT's District 7 office. More details will be provided to you following your reservation. Thank you for joining our virtual information meeting, and please be sure to visit our website at www.majormobilityga.com to get additional information about all of our projects.
All right, so that was the virtual platform where you can have the meeting, and you saw that it went through our website as well. So after the meeting, we want to make sure that we're responding to public comments. So when we have a virtual meeting, we'll start this process after we get all the comments. After we get all the comments, we should be doing that summary of comments within 3 days. So the public meeting is planned on your calendar probably at least 6 weeks in advance. You should block off time, however many days that you need based on your project type, to go through all of the comments and start the summary of comments, and making sure that before you have your debrief meeting, after those 3 days, so that's at least 5 to 7 days before you have your debrief meeting, that the team has all those comments, how you're proposed to respond. And at that meeting, what you're doing is you're filling out your summary of comments with your approximate how you're going to respond to anything that the public has commented on. But you should really have a good framework within those first 3 days. So make sure that we're being very responsive to the public. They're going to expect even more responses in virtual, and they're going to expect it quicker. So make sure that you're making that a priority. After the debrief meeting, of course, since you're only putting the summary of approximately how you're going to respond and the summary of comments, you want to make sure that you're wrapping up the letter 7 days after that, and that the first review is going to now go to the entire team at the same time. So if the project manager and the NEPA analyst and anyone that each office has in the review chain to just do a first review, will all need to review it within that 5 days. At the end of the 5 days, the NEPA analyst will take all the comments gathered and make the revisions or submit them back to the consultant that is making the revisions. And we'll expect that revised letter back within 5 days. At review 2, that's when it's going to go to, if it's a project out of program delivery, that is when it is going to go to Kim to review. And so after those 5 days, if we still have comments, then we will go to a workshop, revise all those comments, and quickly get it back to Kim for concurrence. And when she concurs, it will go to Eric, and Eric will sign that letter. And so if we follow this process, then we meet our goals for responding to comments. Now, I didn't talk about the synopsis yet. When we go back to in-person meetings, we'll do the synopsis the same way that we have traditionally done it, which is within 1 day after the public meeting to let management know kind of what occurred at that meeting. However, with virtual meetings, most of these, again, there's really just, they're not live virtual meetings. So what we need to do is make sure that management knows that we put stuff out there for public review. And the reason for that is to make sure that if somebody does happen to call them, that they know we actually posted information and where it's at. So here's our new synopsis, and you want to send that out about the same day that you advertise for the meeting. It could be the day after, within the day or the day after you advertise, letting management know what the web link is, the date that you're launching the website live, when the comment period is ending, how many postcards we sent out, what is our advertising method, what of local officials do we send this to? So that one's a really good reminder right there, is making sure that we're sending those to our local officials. And what concerns do we actually expect? So we might not know these for sure, but we want to make sure that we give management a good understanding of what the team thinks and what the district thinks concerns may or may not be. And then, of course, fill in your name as the preparer. And what we're doing is, of course, with all this, we're complying with our public involvement plan. So this plan was dated for 2016. We actually have a new public involvement plan for all GDOT projects, where it doesn't just say NEPA projects. That is currently with Federal Highway for review. And so all the offices worked really hard to get all of the updates completed to make all of these changes that we're talking about in there, so that we're in compliance with the plan. Right now, Federal Highway is allowing us to do things based on the updated plan. Some of them, if it's a EA project, then they'll need a letter requesting that we're moving forward with the draft plan. But for all other minor projects, we can just move forward with our approach without further coordination with Federal Highway. But as a part of that, if you guys know, we always have that survey tool. We were asking people, how did you hear about the meeting? Of course, when we met in person, was the location convenient, the time, were questions answered? We actually use all that information, and we do complete an audit every year. And we do work on making changes to the public involvement process as a result of what the public is telling us. And some of those things were all these things that we were currently working on. We're actually, even though we did have to scramble a little bit when COVID started to get to this point to push out this training, all of this stuff and all these changes were already underway. And part of that was because we recognized the changes based on things that we knew from attending and observing public meetings and things that the public actually asked us about. So we do use that information and we do make changes with that. So now the question is, you probably saw in the video where on 400 we were advertising to actually hold a public hearing open house. Well, what we have found out is that because of the environmental regs, we must at least advertise the opportunity to hold a public hearing open house on an EA project. And if we have an EIS project, we still must hold an in-person meeting. So how we're gonna do that and how we need to approach that. So to approach that, what we have to make sure that we're doing is that we're setting the plan of how are we gonna do that. And that even goes out with the virtual. So you saw on the video on 400, where we're holding a live event. We're trying to get as many people to attend virtually as possible. And in order to do that, I mentioned that we're going off of the updated PIP instead of our current 2016 PIP. For Federal Highway to allow us to veer from that, we have to actually send a letter on each EA and EIS project to say that we're advancing and that our draft PIP is at Federal Highway headquarters for review. And we also have to put in a plan in place about how we're going to do that, how are we going to advertise to low-income minority populations, who's in the corridor, do they have, what kinds of things do they have access to, what are we going to show them? So we have to have a good plan in place, and we have to send that to Federal Highway for concurrence. So what happens if people still want to have a meeting? Well, what you can do is there's different things that we're looking at. We're doing a drive-in event. So for the meeting that I showed you with the video for Georgia 400, what we're actually doing is a drive-in event at the district parking lot. We're actually going to have iPads available. And so when people enter the parking lot, we're going to be able to record their license plate, put a cone behind their car, hand them the iPad, and allow them to be able to view everything. So if they don't have internet at home, we will bring, they can come and they can have the internet in their car at our event. Or we will also have an area outside where they could socially distance walk around, where we'll have spaces marked and only allow so many people in the area with the display. So if someone happens to need to take the bus and they don't have a car, then we still have that option available. There's other projects that are going to do more of the drive-in movie, where it is just going to be one screen and recording to everybody. We have another project where they're going to broadcast the presentation on a transponder radio, and it's small enough where they can just do hard copies and hand people mini displays that are going to come to the meetings. So there's different options, and we also have them as down to is we're just advertising, simply advertising the opportunity and not planning to hold anything other than if somebody wants to go to, especially if it's a local project and they want to go to the local city hall and just have a one-on-one. Some local projects are doing that. And so with everything that we've had in the last couple months, we've actually had 4 EAs signed since May. So we've had to do this process and get the website up and running for these complex projects very quickly. And we have an EIS project that the draft was about to be signed that we needed to come up with a plan on. So we have a lot of examples now of what to do. So if there's anything else, if you have a project coming up and you're thinking about your public involvement, especially if it's for a complex project, please reach out to us. Communications is, of course, going to be involved in more complicated projects. I think I had them at the beginning on the very second slide that they are part of the team. Of course, they're not going to be involved with probably our CE level projects, but they'll be more involved in our larger high scale public profile projects. And of course, here's just a little example of how you would have the drive-in meeting where you have cars entering and exiting in a certain location. So probably if you are going to have a drive-in event, you'll want to think about where you're going to hold everything, how you're going to do it, how are cars going to safely enter and exit the venue. And of course, then you would have to have your dry run as well to go along with that. And again, we really want to encourage people to do it virtually and have those virtual events. So you saw on the 400 video where you're going to have a kind of like a Teams meeting. I don't remember what software it's going to be through, where people can see the presentation and ask questions similar to this type of meeting that we're having right now. And then they'll also be able to call in with different languages. So we just want to think about those things. And if you do have people who can't drive, you want to think about how close is it to an area where it's either walkable or there's public transit access. Because they would be the group of people that may have less internet access. So kind of to overview the steps, especially for the virtual meeting, because I threw a lot of information at you. Again, we want to kind of hold a team meeting, whether that's a mini meeting, an email to ensure everyone knows who's doing what, who's creating what materials, and kind of when they needed to be submitted. We want to ensure that QA/QC is complete and submitted, and of course that if it's OPD project, that management is approving it. You want to ensure that all materials, the handouts, fact sheet labs, and infograph boards have been reviewed by the entire team and OPD has concurred to advance before you submit it to myself in environmental for concurrence to advance. You want to make sure that you finish adding the dates to the material and the district has had a chance to provide QA/QC if it wasn't done prior to sending it to myself. So for, of course, our large scale capital improvement projects, communications should also review those. Once you do that, you want to make sure you're finalizing and sending your PI materials to our PI coordinator, who is Ed, to include on the website. And again, that's your handout, your fact sheet, displays, infographics, any videos that you've done for your project. If there's any standard videos, you want to make sure that those are all in the folder so that Ed can put them all on the website. MS4 layouts, any brochures, so Title VI, right away, any noise brochures you want to make sure you're posting. Make sure they're all sent to Ed and they're all put on project-wise so that he can set up that web page. Now, if it's a more complex web page, like you saw in the video for Georgia 400, those ones Ron Battle will also probably be assisting, but the NEPA planner will know who's assisting with those. You want to make sure, again, now you're finalizing your advertisement and all the teams reviewed those ads before they go to printing. You want to get the ad to the district and postcards, of course, for the printing. Review the final web page and make sure that it goes live prior to the ad, and then respond to comments. So frequently asked questions. So some things to consider. Make sure that if you have a detour, you know when you're reaching out to the public. So some things that come up that people ask is, if it's a side road detour, how much outreach are we doing? If the side road is being detoured and it's not the main line, we probably want to look on that side road. And for those, we might not be setting up a whole website. We could just be sending out postcards as more of a FYI, let us know if you have any concerns type of a thing. If it's open to through traffic, then we don't have to do anything as outreach for the side roads unless there's something there, some sort of major business or something like that that might make it unique. And if it's a really short duration, so if we're just closing it for a weekend or something like that, we don't have to do special outreach in the NEPA stage. Of course, under construction, they're always going to make sure that they post that information. And we want to, of course, though, we do always want to make sure that the locals and schools and fire departments always get a letter no matter what when we have a detour, because those are, especially the fire and EMS is all safety related. So make sure you're always corresponding with at least those entities if you're having some sort of a detour. And if not any detour, if you're unclear of how much and when to do the outreach, please reach out to your NEPA, GDOT NEPA analyst, and our, of course, always you can reach out to our NEPA managers, Sunshine, and Ryan is our section manager, so you can reach out to Ryan Perry, or you can even just feel free to email myself and I can let you guys know what kind of outreach your detour project may need or may not need. And another kind of question is, if we're in final design and we have already bought our right of way and we're reaching out to the public just to give them an update because it's been a long time since we coordinated. So the question comes up, do we need a comment card, right? We're not really taking comments. Well, we do still have to allow them to be able to ask questions. So we have to have some sort of ability for them to be able to ask questions about the project, whether that's how long is construction going to take? I didn't understand the materials. We have to allow some sort of way for the public to provide feedback. So we need some sort of card. We're not going to call it a comment card if we're in final design, but we will call it a questionnaire or something along those lines. And where are PI materials housed and how do I get existing infographics? So right now, our PI materials and our directions are housed on, and we're going to be adding all those infographics and layouts to that library on our environmental SharePoint page. Of course, we know there are also directions for what types of materials need to be on plans and things like that. We're working towards linking up everything, so no matter what page you go to, you can find all those directions, and they will be housed in multiple, I think the links will be in multiple locations. So if you go to Roadway to look at what you have to have on your layouts, that you'll be able to just go to one place and click on the buttons to see everything else. But we're working on that right now. I think that about covers my presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to let me know what questions you guys have, and I can begin answering questions.
Thank you, Amber. I'll go through some of these questions that I haven't been able to type up quick responses to.
All right.
Amy Diaz asks, who do we contact to ask for a copy or permission to use the LOS infographic for local government?
The infographic is going to be placed on our SharePoint page, so you can just reach out to the GDOT NEPA planner. If you don't know who your GDOT NEPA planner is, then you can email either Sunshine, Beba, or Ryan Perry.
Another question, how can you send text messages to those on the don't call list?
You can't send text messages to those on the don't call list. So the text message advertising is actually done through a vendor. And so I think probably a lot of us have gotten those political text messages. That's how that's done, is the vendor will send out the message blast. And if they're on the do not call list, then we can't blast them. So they just wouldn't get that text. So they would have to pick up our advertisements, seeing it in another way if our project is using text. We still want to make sure we're sending out postcards and doing things in other ways as well.
All right, another question. Will virtual meetings continue for CEs even after the pandemic subsides?
Yes, so virtual meetings for CEs will continue. That will be our preferred method of doing public outreach, unless we come up with something innovative and we need people to learn how to drive through it and we need to have something more interactive. So if we need an interactive display where people can play with the vehicles, we may go out to in person, or if there's a lot of public controversy, but probably we won't know if there's a lot of public controversy before a virtual. So in our updated public involvement policy that's with Federal Highway Headquarters for review, our approach is all CE projects will be virtual.
All right, Kaylin asks, for the 24 days of advertisement plus comment period, the 10-day comment period is in business days. Is the 14 days of advertisement also business days? So a total of just over a month. I think, are we talking business days or calendar days?
Oh, so if we're having an in-person meeting, that 2 weeks is just calendar days. So just making sure people see that first ad before an in-person meeting of about 24. And I do know that 10 days, sometimes we count business days and sometimes we count calendar days. Once you do that, it's only a 2-day difference. So that's not whatever we usually do. I think we try to count for the 10-day comment period after an in-person meeting as business days. So we could probably continue to do it that way. Overall, you're right, that's about a 2-day difference.
All right, another good question. Can a mailing service be used, or do the postcards have to be mailed from a local post office in the project vicinity?
If you have to, so when I was talking about that every door direct mail, so the vendor that we use personally for GDOT, our vendor puts the addresses on there, so they just get mailed regularly. If you do use every door direct mail, so if your vendor who's printing won't print out the actual addresses, they don't do that envelope for you, then they do have to be bundled and they do have to be taken to the post office that they come out of. So it's going to depend on what your printing vendor does. And so you'll have to know that.
All right, Kyle Collins asks, can we make adjustments to the PIOH site while it's live? We had a major rebuttal site spreading some misinformation that we could have addressed related to a project in Greene County. We had the key points of the against group that totaled over 2,000 supporters earlier on and weren't able to respond. By the time the comments are out months later, their minds have been made up. So can we add to or revise PIOH websites while they are live?
Yes, we can add information to the website as it's live. I would caution against making any changes, where we're just going to, if we change the design in the middle of something, then we would definitely want to at least make sure that we're telling people why we did that if it's live, because then people are seeing two different things and that's confusing. But definitely, if there is something going on your project and we need to address it, adding information to address that is appropriate. In fact, our new website, if you saw at the top, people can follow it. So any changes you make to the website, if they choose to follow your project, they will automatically get. So it's definitely a good idea that if there's false and misinformation that is getting out there, that we are going ahead and addressing it on the website, even if the comment period has already closed. So we can make those changes at any time on the website so that people who are following it will automatically get notified.
there's a question about consultants being scoped to print postcards and mail. So I know that new scopes or scopes that are being currently developed include printing and mailing of postcards in the scope. A commenter says, actually, the consultants are not scoped to do postcards or mailing, only respond to comments and handouts. The postcard is a new thing consultants are doing. So my brief answer was, existing scopes include many hours for PI that would not be used since meetings are now virtual. So no physical meeting prep or attendance, printing of handouts, layouts, etc. This surplus of unused PI hours should cover printing and mailing of postcards. Current and future consultant scopes include printing and mailing. Existing scope can be discussed at team meetings. Do you have anything to add to that, Amber, or correct from my response?
So please, when you have that as a team, work with your PMs. Certain contracts we have worked with our procurement folks, and there are certain times when we can do a minor change for the contract file for how that change in man hours is moving to the cost for the vendor. Not all contracts can make that change. The PMs would be the best ones to be able to say if they can or can't make that change. If that change cannot be made, then we will do the printing through our GDOT vendor so that you can just work on just doing the actual postcard, and we will print it in-house for those contracts that cannot be updated. So we'll be able to have those capabilities, but your PM will know those rules and what type of contract you have, and if it's available to edit that contract.
Thank you, Amber. Susan Thomas asks, how many EIS projects does GDOT or local governments have in process currently? I can think of two.
Yes, there's
Top
two
End
projects.
and Durand.
Yes, that's correct. Those are the two that we have in progress right now. And I believe both of those are expected to go to public hearings within the next probably 6-7 months.
All right, JC asks, is there a set number of people that need to request a meeting before a meeting will be held? I assume this is for HOHs. And my brief answer was people can be met with individually to avoid a large meeting if only a few people request a meeting. If several meeting requests are received, a socially distant PHOH plan will be developed. Is that correct, Amber?
So yeah, so correct. So what we've been doing and we have differing levels of scales of complexity of EA projects. So probably our simplest EA project was an EA project because of Park Service impacts to the Park Service. And so that's a more minor EA, and that one we are just advertising the opportunity, and the approach is if somebody requests it, they're just sitting down with the city council, and the city council's plan to Federal Highway is that they would hold meetings with 1 to 10 people at once as they request it. So for that project, it was just that simple. And then we have the 400 project where we wanted to advertise the opportunity but already have it scheduled so that there's not project delays, because there's a tight schedule on that. And so for that one, if even one person requests to come, then we'll make sure that we're there and set up to handle however many people are asking to come to that meeting. If we're just advertising the opportunity, I would probably already have a plan in place. Like I said, with the city council local project, where their plan was if one person requests it, that they're just going to sit down with them. If we already have that plan in place, then we won't really have to have a number in mind that would cause us to go to an in-person. Most likely, we're not going to get a really high number of people requesting the meetings on your project, especially if we do have a robust virtual opportunity for people. So just make sure you have that plan in place for what you would do if one person does request it.
Thanks, Amber. Very good question here. How will you clean the iPads for the drive-through events? We've proposed using disinfectant wipes, I believe.
Yeah, well, there's going to be disinfectant, but I believe they're going to be wipes. I don't know if it's going to be spray or wipes, but yes, we're going to disinfect them between each person.
All right, Katina Lear from Communications. The district communications officers will be involved in all levels of projects, correct? So they should be involved in the team meetings from the very beginning. They can also assist with social media postings and other media related items, and also have a really great understanding of the communities they serve. This is true. Communication staff should absolutely be and are invited to PI kickoff meetings, and they are great resources for all public involvement activities. Do you have anything to add to that, Amber?
No, that's correct. And that's where I had at that first slide, the different groups of people that were going to be involved. I did group communications kind of all together, but yeah, district communications and the district should be invited early on. Again, before I review materials, I would expect that you would have reached out to the districts, and that includes district communications, to make sure that the team's on the same page and that the materials make sense to the district as well. Like I said, once I approve things, things are going to go fast. There's not going to be a lot of time for lots of parties to start reviewing and approving materials. So just make sure that before you send stuff to me as a PM, after you get concurrence from your management, that you have had a meeting with the team.
Thanks, Amber. I have another question. In terms of materials, should FAQs be part of the handout or fact sheet, or are these just a separate deliverable to be used for the website?
So frequently asked questions are a part of our updated handout. So whether we're going to an in-person or online, we should think about what those frequently asked questions are and already have them answered. This will reduce the amount of time that it takes to actually do our response letter. So anything that we know people are going to ask, we should already be prepared. So I think one of the big examples that Albert Shelby always gives is when we're doing median breaks, we already know for a lot of cases the answer to why we can or can't look at something. So we should provide people that reasoning. So if there's a major roadway that we have to have a break to and there's something else that's very close, we already know that we can't provide that. So we should respond to that in advance because we know that's always controversial. So anything that we know, and this is where the district and district communications and that conversation is really going to come in handy, because they'll know what their constituents have the biggest concerns about for that area, that we can respond to it. So as another example, if it's a place that doesn't have a lot of roundabouts, sometimes the biggest question is people question the safety of the roundabouts. We could already have a question about that and respond and telling people to take a look at this brochure that we have on this webpage. It talks about how they're safer and why they're safer. So things like that, we should absolutely be addressing on the website and even in the handout when we go back to in-person meetings. And I guess just to add to that, the handout, when we're doing online meetings, we're really taking that handout material and posting it on the main page for people to see. If we're having a virtual live event in the in-person meeting, then we're going to print, then we'll have that whole cover signature page that welcomes people to the meeting. If we're just placing virtual material on there, then we're really just looking at we're not looking at that welcome letter, because the website already has a welcome introduction. So we're just actually using that handout to take that material and information off of to populate the website. So you guys may have noticed for our virtual, especially our CE projects, we're not signing a cover page of the letter anymore.
Thanks, Amber. We have a question from Chris Goodson, our ecology section manager. What opportunities are there for environmental SMEs to participate in public involvement if there are particularly unique environmental resources within the proposed project corridor?
So yeah, definitely. Especially the NEPA analyst should be coordinating with all the specialists about that. So when I was talking about that name tag key of who kind of should be involved with public involvement, and make sure you're filling that out as you advance in the steps, people should absolutely be looking at any subject matter expert who should attend those meetings. So, it's just like if you have unique traffic, you need to make sure that someone from traffic is involved in the conversation. So if you have unique species or structures, things like that, you want to look at your ecologist or your historian. And of course, if you have noise walls, then you want to make sure that you're including your noise analyst in all of that. So that's where especially that introductory meeting really comes in handy, so that right away who should be kind of involved throughout the process and who needs to be coordinated with on different levels and different scales of projects. That's right. So if you guys have any questions that you think of after, my email address is aphillips, APHILLIPS at georgiadot.gov. So ga.dot.gov. And then my number is 404-631-1117. So you guys need to contact me.
All right, Amber, I responded to that question with your email address.
Thank you, Ron.
All right, next question. Will response letters be sent by a project email or via the PM? Concern is any back and forth with the public on the response letter, if it's electronic.
Okay, so yeah, so on our website, we're getting mostly now electronic feedback. And so actually, Ryan and I and Sunshine just talked about this yesterday. And what we're working on is creating a separate email address box. And we talked to Ron about it as well, or we corresponded with Ron via email. And so we're probably in the very near future going to set up an email box that all of our comments can be sent from, and it's probably going to be called something like no reply environmental box, something along those lines, so that we're sending out those responses, and it's not just a quick back and forth where people are commenting on our response letter. So if they did want to provide further comment and outreach, they actually have to think about it and go back to the original advertising and the way that they would respond without a public meeting. They would have to actually look into that without easily just being able to do that back and forth out of someone's personal email. And so that will hopefully come out here soon.
Katina left a good comment here. Also need to be sure that you're putting out language in the text messages that we are not selling their information.
Yes, correct. So if we do send out text messages, there are very limited wording before the price goes up. So at a minimum, we at least need to, if it doesn't fit in the text message, we have to put it on the website. And if you are sending text messages on those types of projects, we want to make sure that we're coordinating with communications on those sorts of things and what that message should and should not say.
All right, we have a question from Scott Shelton at Atkins. Has participation in rural areas been good? Curious if everyone in rural areas has access to the web.
So currently, and we're going to do we usually do our PI audit every year by October. Now we just started these, so probably in October when we do the audit, we're going to do a quick, audit for the past few months to see how participation has been and where. Currently, it appears that we're actually getting more participation on these. We're at least getting similar participation, but on some projects, we're actually so far gotten more participation doing this way. And what's good about the rural areas and the postcards is that they'll at least have a postcard and know what information and what project it is, so that they can call in and get the information if they don't have web access, so we can actually send them personalized information. I don't know that anyone has requested that yet, but I also can't say for sure that I know how many projects in rural areas that we've gone out to, but we will have that audit results and we are looking at that. But there's definitely ways for those individuals to participate who don't have the web by getting and receiving the postcard.
Thanks, Amber. I would also add that we really haven't seen any issues with any internet access or any low degree of participation in online activities from any part of the state, in my experience. We have another question. Would you please provide more detailed guidance on the selection of postal routes?
So yeah, so the postal routes, you are going to have to use your professional judgment. So we all, based on your project type and based on what that postal route, so all postal routes look different, the way the postal route goes in comparison to your project. It might go vertically, it might go horizontally. So we're going to have to look at that and ensure that we're selecting the postal routes that make the most sense based on the project and our professional opinion. And so with that, of course, try to save your screenshots so that we can put those in the file, at least for what postal routes that we took. And if you save those screenshots and send them out, you can coordinate with the district as well. They would have a good idea of who the direct people to send postcards to. Of course, obviously, anyone directly adjacent to the corridor, especially if we're taking right away from them, we need to make sure they're getting a postcard. So that's the the clearest point. And then how far you go, it's going to depend on your project. If it's just a simple project and we're looking at a detour, if there's people that have an easy way around that's the same distance, then you can clearly tell when to stop, because that detour that we're getting out of them, we're trying to see how it's impacting the community in NEPA. We're not necessarily trying to tell them that there's going to be a detour and the road's going to be closed 2 years from now. We're really trying to gather information about how that detour is going to affect them to help with our staging, if we have any capabilities to look at that, or if there's something we just think of. So those sorts of things are always going to just be dependent on what we know. And so it's not just that. There's a lot of things in the process that are really left to personal and professional judgment, and this is one area that is left to that.
And I'd add that this is a good discussion to have at a PI team meeting. You know, it's good to have input from the district. All right, thanks, Amber. Next question, another question from Scott Shelton at Atkins. For infographics, can we as consultants create an infographic or icon and submit for GDOT review and approval to be used if not available in the GDOT library?
Correct, yes, so that is the plan, to build the library. As we need new infographics, we are definitely going to need those to be created. If there's a consultant contract, definitely create those, and we want to add to our infograph PowerPoint so that we're building a large library, and at some point we'll have a lot of infographics so that people can easily and quickly grab those. And you know, the idea is, again, more pictures for the public, the website, and maybe at some point in the future, more pictures for our environmental documents. And maybe even our handouts.
Yes, send us all your infographics. Next question, is there guidance for design regarding what the PIOH layouts should and shouldn't include?
There is guidance for what the layout should and shouldn't include. I believe that Roadway was looking to get those out on their website. I will have to follow up with them to see if they are now posted, and we can get back to you guys on that, where those are. But I believe they're going to be posted on the Roadway website. And like I said, we're going to have a link. We're going to try to link everything. So I will also, if that link exists, place it in our PI SharePoint page on the OES website so that everyone can clearly find it quickly.
All right, we have a question. What are introductory boards?
Those are those infographic boards that I showed you in the presentation about letting the public know what the existing conditions are, what we're going to do without the project. So really the introductory infographic boards are anything that's not the project layouts, and more pictures than words.
Okay, we have some comments from communications. We would prefer the consultants do not create their own icons. If there are icons that are not in the library, we will develop them internally. No logo on displays other than GDOT. The only wiggle room is if the projects are locally sponsored. Work with the PM on that. And again, no, we do not want consultants to create those. GDOT Communications has concerns about GDOT branding.
Okay, yeah, then any infographics that are needed, then coordinate with your PMs or your environmental analysts, and we'll get those needs to communications, and they can create those icons. Now, of course, if you're doing a board and you need pictures from your actual existing corridor, then make sure you're getting pictures of the corridor to go on your displays as well, or on your website.
Yes, and the original question did indicate that the consultant would submit any developed infographics for GDOT approval. So I think it was implied that there would be an approval step on the GDOT end. Heather Edwards has a question. What kind of participation are you getting from any EJ populations with virtual meetings? Piggybacking on the rural area question.
So currently we have had specialized virtual EJ outreach in highly EJ populations, and so far what we know is that we're getting similar participation. We'll be doing again that higher scale audit here in October, just for the 6 months. Of course, the full scale audit would be next year. But right now, all indicators is that we're still getting similar participation or a lot higher participation, even in those areas.
All right, thank you, Amber. Next question. If we are anticipating controversy on an EA, do you recommend using the interactive PI similar to SR 400, as well as other public engagement indicated in the proposal?
Yeah, so if we're expecting a lot of controversy, we definitely want to make sure, especially if we don't want to advertise the opportunity for a hearing if we're expecting controversy, because it will delay the project. So we want to make sure that we have as many ways that people can participate as possible, and that we're really looking at how that participation can be facilitated. So again, you saw Georgia 400 where they're having the live event. People can call in if they need it in Spanish. There's the web page that people can peruse, and there's a language. It will change the web page to whatever language is needed. So those needs exist. There was that little icon at the beginning. You may have missed it, but just you can go back and look at our website at any time, and you can even see our minor projects. So those things are all ways to communicate, and especially through advertising and postcards and any mailers that you need to do. So when another team is doing that needs postcards for more EJ populations and language, they have a specialized mailer. Is actually a kind of a front and back folder mailer that you can put more information on than a postcard. So if you need multiple languages and things like that, there are other inexpensive mailer options that exist out there, and we can get those examples as they are completed into our SharePoint website as well. So just thinking about your population and how you can communicate with them as much as possible in a social distancing aspect, and then of course ways that they can safely do it in person if needed.
Thanks, Amber. Katina is adding to this discussion. She says, we are very soon going to have in-house capability for the virtual room that's being utilized on the MMIP projects. We will be able to create those rooms ourselves. So that's a development for these live, larger scale virtual public involvement initiatives.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, definitely if you have a larger, like I said, an EA, especially an EA project rounding towards public hearing, then we want to make sure that we're looking at all these tools and options out there. If it's a public information meeting, those things we don't have to coordinate with Federal Highway, but you'll definitely want to be coordinating with your team. And again, your team is going to be larger depending on more complexities of your project, especially about our capabilities. So if you do have a project that needs a live room, definitely want to coordinate with your project manager to set up an individualized special meeting that can include communications and our communications and PI staff that will be doing the websites.
Thanks, Amber. We have another comment here. This is a good question. For projects caught in the middle of the development of this guidance, i.e. that have detour layouts under review with OPD now, would we hold an after the fact PI kickoff meeting?
No, so if it's already in development, what you would want to do is make sure after OPD and myself have concurred to advance, make sure that the district has received everything, or right after OPD concurs, have the district take a quick look at it before sending it to me. So for these ones in the middle of that process, just either way is fine. Hopefully we were already getting, some sort of QA, QC, or some sort of feedback, at least at a minimum level, for all these projects in the process, and that we kind of already knew the district's concerns. But if we did not, then you can do that after that fact. And you might still be, depending on what OPD's office procedures are. If you guys send it to them first, make sure you have that meeting with the team quickly after. If you haven't already had some sort of, correspondence with the district, make sure you have that meeting and then send everything to me after you correspond with the district.
In reference to controversy, why is one comment considered controversy?
So controversy, it's not necessarily that one comment is considered controversy. Sometimes it's going to depend on the subject. So if that one comment comes from local government, or it comes from the EMS or school, it might be more controversial than if it just comes from an individual. Usually I think those are the times where a one singleized letter is considered controversial by Federal Highway. If it's just an individual and it's, so one person just doesn't like a project, that's not generally considered controversial. it might be that it's a big business that actually affects many in the community, then there's another example of maybe when one letter would be considered controversial. But in general, I don't believe that one letter is considered controversial. But it will depend on what entity that letter is coming from.
All right, we had a question. For non-NEPA project virtual meetings, do we still coordinate with Ed submitting the online materials? My short answer was yes, federal and state funded projects are handled identically.
That is correct. So state and federal projects are handled the same way. So you still have to go through the whole approval process. You need to make sure that the PM office head is concurring to advance and OES is concurring to advance, and everyone's reviewed the materials, and then it's given to Ed to place on the website, no matter the funding. If it's a local project and the locals are doing their own website, just make sure that that's communicated and we all know what the plan is and where that stuff is being posted. They may be doing everything and we'll just be able to view it for oversight, or they may be asking us to do it. That is the only time where that might be a little bit different when it's the local project.
Thanks, Amber. Question, where in the updated handout would the FAQs be added? I would say just add it, just post it to the end, and we will extract from the handout.
There should be a place on the handout already for frequently asked questions. I believe that's already included on the handout, and you can delete or add
handouts
to.
are on SharePoint.
Yes, and you can always add more information to a handout depending on your project's specific needs as well. It's just a template.
All right, question, do the designers submit to OPD and then the NEPA analysts submit to Amber?
Oh yeah, so when everyone's gathering information for the approval process, I think what we've kind of asked, and it can, that at least the NEPA analyst is putting it onto ProjectWise, so that everyone just has a link to the same location, because it has to be saved. All that stuff has to be saved in ProjectWise anyway. So during those team meetings, you know, the actual person putting it on ProjectWise is who, as long as it's there and it gets there and it's in one place for that concurrence to occur, then that should be fine. Just knowing who's going to place it on there and where it's going to be is a good conversation topic. If it just going straight to if it goes straight to the PM needs to make sure that at least the NEPA analyst has a copy so that they can place it onto SharePoint.
All right, yeah, and the NEPA analyst will manage that public involvement materials folder in ProjectWise. So as long as the NEPA analyst eventually gets it and can post it to ProjectWise, we'll be in good shape. Lee Walton asks, a good question here. To what specific website address will information and recording be posted? So Amber, where is this PowerPoint going to be available, and where will the recording be posted?
So we're going to post this recording on our SharePoint page, and I will look into other places to post it. But right now, for the immediate, it will be on OES's SharePoint Environmental NEPA SharePoint page for quick access. And I believe that we've had other virtual presentations. So Gail just gave a schedule virtual presentation. So we will be working on putting those also in one place. But for immediately after this, we will get it placed as quickly as possible on our SharePoint page and then in alternate locations.
Laura has a comment here regarding the rural question. In one of our recent virtual PIOH examples in a rural project area, The postcards with the telephone number provided the public access to the PM, and there was no concern with the web-based materials since they could speak on the phone. It seemed like a positive experience, an example where the public could contact the project team on a timeline convenient for them and not be limited by a specific in-person meeting time. In this case, the availability of internet did not appear to cause any challenges to accessing the public involvement process. That's a good point, and that's consistent with my experience with rural projects as well. We're actually providing more opportunities and facilitating dialogue with the public in rural areas by this online initiative. We have a question about local governments. Do local governments have access to the virtual room?
So I assume that you guys are talking about the 400 virtual room. So that's where Katina was saying that we are going to soon have access to create those ourselves in GDOT on multiple projects. So if we need to do a virtual room on a project, then they probably want to, again, coordinate with the team and talk about what those needs are. And we should be able to just, once we get the materials, be able to populate things. So once we have that in the template, then we should be able to do it. So we'll just need to know that it's needed for a project. So that's why that team coordination meeting throughout the process, not just one meeting. Like I said, the first meeting might be simply who's doing what when, but make sure you're coordinating your meetings throughout each step along the way.
Thanks, Amber. Question, is OES SharePoint internal to GDOT staff only or externally available as well? It's available to our consultants. Amber, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, it's available for also anyone within GDOT. I think for our consultants, if you don't already have access, that you have to request access. And I believe if you need access to that, you can request access from Sunshine. Is that correct, Ryan?
I'm not sure that Sunshine is the point of contact. I think this is something that we're working out internally right now.
Okay. Well, if you guys need access then for now, if you don't have access to the OES SharePoint page, then send me an email and I will make sure that you guys are able to get access.
Thanks, Amber. Heather Edwards has a question. You mentioned that you did some specialized EJ outreach. Will you describe these efforts?
So I believe what we ended up doing, and that was, I don't know if you're familiar with that project, Ryan. It was Elliot's project, and I think he worked with Federal Highway. I don't know all the details on that, but for some of the other projects that we are looking at for the specialized outreach, that's where we're getting those yard signs and making sure they're going up around bus stops, doing text messages, making sure we're putting materials in language when we advertise. That's where I was talking about those specialized postcards where you can fold them in certain ways and different mailers. So those are the different ways right now that we have been doing outreach to those communities.
Let's see, there's a question. Yes, I was wondering if local governments could use that if it is a local let. So I think the question is if it's a local let project, locally sponsored project, would GDOT help facilitate the virtual PI and the virtual meeting?
Oh, I think right now we always try to put the local stuff up on our website anyway. So if it's a local project and you guys have all the materials ready, I don't see why it's would be any issue from even in the past when we put up the information on our site. So that we should be able to do that. Once we have that template for that virtual room, we should be able to put things up in there just as easy as long as they're created by the locals.
All right, I think we've gone through all of the questions that that we've received so far.
Well, then, thank you everyone for attending, and we'll try to get this link up to the recording as soon as possible. And if you just think of any other questions, you have my contact information, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible.
Amber, is it all right if we, once we get a URL where this is going to be hosted, we can send it out to the list of email addresses we have for attendees?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, then, thank you, everyone.